You're listening to the Quint's podcast.
And we're back with the new podcast series, the Aussie Challenge with Ayaz Memon on the Quint. And with me, of course, is Ayaz as we take you through all that's happened in the ODI series opener in Sydney that Australia have won by 66 runs. Ayaz, great to have India playing international cricket again. Not the kind of performance, though, that, we sort of expected from them.
Well, yes, I mean, they would be disappointed with the result, and not just the result. I think the margin of defeat, 66 runs is a big margin in ODIs, and that's what it was for India. I thought that they were below par in batting, certainly also in the bowling. In fact, the bowling first, because that's when Australia were allowed to score 374, and after that it was always going to be uphill. Not easy to chase anything above 350, especially when you're not playing at home, and more particularly if your top order does not deliver as Australia's did. So, it's not a very long batting lineup that India had. There are four bowlers who don't add to too much in the batting heft. So they, from the top six, they need at least four batsmen to click. And if three don't, then you're in trouble. And that's what happened today, despite the best efforts of Shikhar Dhawan and especially Hardik Pandya. Not enough runs from Mayank Agarwal, Virat Kohli and Shreyas Iyer. And that more or less sealed the matter.
I'm Menra Dorji.
And I'm Ayaz Memon.
And you're listening to the Aussie Challenge Podcast on the Quint, powered by Farm Easy and Medibuddy. Okay, I'll quickly take you through the scores. Australia elected to bat first and Warner and Finch reunited to post 156 for the first wicket before Warner got out on 69 in the 28th over. Finch went on to make 114 and Steve Smith also made a century, 105 actually, before he fell to Shami. Glenn Maxwell left his IPL form behind as he smashed 45 of 19 and Australia posted 374 for 6. Chahal went for 89, Saini 83, Bumrah 73 and Shami actually was the most economical with 3 for 59 in his 10 overs. In reply, India's openers made 53 before Mayank got out on 22. Virat Kohli made 21 of 21 before Josh Hazlewood sent him back. Hazlewood, in fact, also picked Mayank's wicket earlier and also, got the wicket of Shreyas Iyer 2 balls after Virat's. Hardik Pandya and Shikhar Dhawan then staged a fight back with a 128-run fifth wicket partnership, but after Dhawan fell on 74 in the 35th over, Pandya followed on 90 and India finished on 308 for 8, losing by 66 runs. Ayaz, now quite a trend there. All our Indian T20 league players who didn't do so well coming out to the SCG almost with a vengeance. Hazlewood, Finch, even Zampa who picked 4 wickets. Maxwell, we know his struggles for his Punjab franchise, and then also Pandya to an extent.
Well, yes, certainly. Look, there are two aspects to this. One is, of course, the format itself. In the T20 format, the form of T20 cricket can be very misleading. There are smaller, shorter boundaries. What goes for a catch on a regular field might go for a 6 in a T20 game. The other is obviously the pitches and the ground conditions. There are different pitches in Australia than they were in the UAE, where the Indian Premier League was played, or the India T20 League was played. So I think that, this is all coming to the fore. Also, Australia at full strength. Let's not forget that. David Warner, Steve Smith weren't there the last time India told Australia in 2018. And both these guys made a lot of runs today, especially Steve Smith, the way he batted. He's almost impossible to set to field to once he's got his eye in, because he's so unorthodox. He just picks the gaps with such consummate ease. So, I think overall, if you look at the scores, you might say that India didn't do too badly to get past 300 despite losing, many in the top order cheaply. But this was a very flat track, and, if they had made to 350, 360, chasing 374 or 375, it would have been admirable. But a 66-run margin is a fairly big margin. Let's not forget that.
Rohit Sharma, India definitely missed him at the top. I know we're talking about this series, but his topic sort of is almost one of the biggest to-be controversies right now. Virat Kohli yesterday on the eve of the match was quite clear, sent out quite a clear message saying, he was kept out of the loop regarding Rohit Sharma's fitness or, lack of fitness in fact. He even said he didn't understand why Rohit didn't travel to Australia like Ridhiman Saha did, who also is suffering from a hamstring injury, and he could have been made available whenever he did recover. And late at night we got a BCCI email saying Rohit went back to India because he wanted to meet his ailing father. So lots of things happening there behind the scenes also for India.
Look, I in my opinion, this whole controversy is unsavory and was pointless. I mean, quite needless. There is a moot question to it, and I think that this needs to be answered by somebody in the BCCI. I think it's the lack of transparency and clarity, much the words that even somebody like a Virat Kohli used. If Rohit wasn't fit, and BCCI President Saurav Ganguly kept saying that he's only 70% fit, then why was he included in the Test squad? Why was he named in the Test squad? He shouldn't have been named. And there is a player who's playing the Test matches, Ridhiman Saha, who's not 100% fit, and he's there. So I think there's a lot of lack of coordination within the establishment. Selectors, the NCA, the BCCI, maybe the players themselves, the captain claiming that he's in the dark. Ravi Shastri sending out a statement from Australia that if they don't leave within the next 3-4 days, it's not possible for them to play the Test series, both him and Ishant. Now, last night at about midnight, there's a press release from the BCCI which explained that actually Rohit came back to meet his father who was unwell, and which is fair, he has to come back and meet his father. But can he then fly back immediately into Australia and do his 15-day quarantine? Nobody has an answer to that. And also Ishant Sharma, who was not named in the squad, who was unlike Rohit, he's been declared unfit for the entire series. So it just seems to me that there are lots of things happening, too many loose ends, nobody knows how to close the loop, so to speak. So there's something that the selectors are saying, there's something that the team management in Australia is saying, there's something that the BCCI president is saying, and so on, and there's something else emerging from the NCA. So it's become a rigmarole.
I have a feeling we're going to be talking about this injury of his for quite a while now, maybe into the Test series as well. Do remember, our podcast series does last the entire tour, so we'll be coming with podcasts after every game. Now, coming back to the match, Mayank Agarwal has now played 4 ODIs as an opener. 32 in New Zealand earlier this year was his highest score for India so far in this format. Made 22 today. Thoughts on him batting in that position in one-day cricket?
Well, this is my opinion. I thought that maybe Rahul should have opened, and that's not because after what's happened in this match, but I thought Rahul was in glorious form. Yes, I mentioned about the formats being different, but he was in glorious form in white ball cricket, and maybe he should have opened. And of course, I think Mayank should be in the playing 11. But when you're chasing 374, then you have to have a frenetic start, which I thought they got. The first 2 overs were bowled so poorly by Stark and Cummins that India were India were more than 50 runs in just about 4 overs, and that's after that getting that kind of a start. Things needed to stabilize a bit, and I think that's where some of the batsmen made some mistakes. Mayank Agarwal playing a very low percentage shot. Virat Kohli getting an early life from Zampa, but not making capital out of it. And then, of course, Shreyas Iyer completely flummoxed by that, superb bouncer from Josh Hazlewood. So I think the extra bounce in the pitch undid all 3 batsmen.
You talked about dropped catches. There were quite a few dropped catches by the Indian team as well. You can't really say they're out of touch though, right? I mean, they were playing the Indian T20 League just 3 weeks back. And unlike the Aussies, actually, they were not room bound during their quarantine, which is actually quite a strange decision by the BCCI. Indians trained during their quarantine while the Aussies were actually disciplined about it and stayed inside their rooms, even though they all flew down to Australia together.
Well, I think generally the fielding was poor today from both teams. Both teams dropped catches. I mean, Steve Smith was dropped early on in his innings, and who knows, had he not been dropped, the target may have been 330, 335, 340, and that just makes it so much easier to chase. The psychological burden becomes lesser. But then, of course, even Hardik Pandya was dropped, and Shikhar Dhawan had a life. So, for some reason, and it perhaps had to do with the lights, because from the reactions of the players, there was a catch which Pat Cummins just completely, missed completely. He just didn't spot the ball. Maybe Adam Zampa felt the same way. So, overall, I think the catching was poor from both teams. But the ground fielding of India was perhaps weaker than Australia. So that is something they'll need to work on. And I mentioned this earlier, that in Australia, unlike in the UAE or in the IPL, where boundaries are 60, 65 yards, it's easier to field, run around, either you give 1 run or the ball goes for a 4. But on longer boundaries, 75, 80 yard boundaries, the fielders have to put in a lot more effort. And if they're not 110% fit, then it'll start showing up.
Okay, Hardik Pandya, 90 of 76 today, shows while, batting at 6 in the Indian T20 league gives you just about 20-40 balls to play in one day cricket. It means there's a lot of room to step up and almost guide an innings, which he almost sort of did to a victory.
I thought he batted quite superbly. It showed maturity, it showed a sense of purpose. Of course, he's got such a wide range of strokes and he's a very intrepid batsman. He hits the ball in the air, but he knows exactly what he's doing. That's the good part about Hardik. So I thought, in my opinion, he was deserving of a century. It didn't happen because after Shikhar Dhawan fell, he knew that he had to accelerate if they had to have some kind of a chance. But overall, when you look at the situation that he walked into, and remember he's number 6, after him there's no there's no batsman remaining. There's only Jadeja, the all-rounder, and then a very long tail that India has. So considering all of that, I thought he and Shikhar played anchor, played the supporting role to Hardik, who was going great guns, and that partnership at least kept India alive in the match till the very end, almost, till the 40th over. So, but Hardik, I think this is a very important innings for him. He has come into the Indian team on the basis of being a fast bowling all-rounder. Now he is not bowling because of his fitness problems, so he has to play as a specialist batsman. And if he doesn't get these big scores, then there are other specialist batsmen available. So this was a very significant innings from him.
Indian bowlers went for some big runs today. Chahal, in fact, conceded most runs by an Indian spinner in one-day cricket. One for 89 in his 10. Bumrah went for 73, Saini 83. Tough game for the Indian bowlers.
Very tough, and I think it's a wake-up call because everybody, before they went there and after they were there in the 15 days quarantine period, there were so many stories, there's so much talk about how great the Indian bowling attack is. Of course, the fast bowlers and also the spinners having a hold over the Aussie batsmen. Now, this is a rude wake-up call. So, Bumrah going for runs is something which will make the Aussies so much more confident because he's been their nemesis. Shami was the pick of the bowlers because he bowled a very, very good length and line. Bumrah, I thought, was a trifle too short. And then, of course, the others, I think they went after Yuzvendra Chahal because he could be a danger man. And Jadeja, unfortunately, is still not picking up wickets. We saw that in the IPL and we saw it in the first match too. So you need to have bowlers who pick up wickets. Otherwise, it's going to be a leather hunt for India, even in white ball cricket.
I know you mentioned Smith and Warner earlier, but then I have to ask you this. Last tour, they weren't there because, of course, both of them had been banned. This time round, they've just shown in this match itself a half century, a century that, big things can be expected of them, especially with the big test series coming in India, not looking like they'll be playing full strength.
Yes, look, Warner and Smith being there is, you can't put it, in terms of stats, but it's 50-60% of Australia's batting strength. Perhaps a little more. If you look at the career aggregates that they've got, there's nobody else who matches up to their run-making ability. And especially in Australia, Warner is deadly. Smith is, of course, deadly everywhere. But Warner doesn't have such a great record outside Australia. But in Australia, he is absolutely devastating. So both these batsmen being back, don't forget, they have missed out on 1 year's cricket, which is a lot of time in a cricketer's life. And they are both very keen to make up for that lost time. So, India's bowlers better watch out.
Okay, thank you, Ayaz. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Mindra. Thank you. We'll catch up.
You were listening to the Aussie Challenge Podcast with Ayaz Memon on the Quint, powered by Farm Easy, India's largest online pharmacy, and MediBuddy.
Thanks for listening. Log on to the Quint's website and check out our other podcasts